From the moment Donald Trump declared that no more Muslims should be admitted here until American officials figure out what the hell is going on, as he put it, he's been subjected to a tsunami of media criticism and fought back on the airwaves.
And it seems as though you're acting out of fear, not making us look strong, and rejecting what America is all about.
Chris, we are at war with radical Islamic terrorism.
Right,
we
not
are at war,
all
whether
Islam.
you like it or whether you
Not
don't like
all
it.
Things got so heated on MSNBC's morning show that Joe Scarborough threatened to break off the interview.
Donald, you're not going to keep talking. We will go to break. If you keep talking, we're going to ask you questions. All right, go to break. Go to break, everybody. Go to break. Go to break right now. We'll be right back with more Morning Joe.
Not to worry, they came back and continued the interview uninterrupted for half an hour. As many in the Republican Party denounced Trump's plan, many journalists pressed him as well.
This week, you've been called a bigot, a fascist, a demagogue.
Not me.
Is that what you're doing?
No, it's the opposite. It's called Make America Great Again.
Joining us now to analyze this virtual state of war between the media and the Republican frontrunner, Mercedes Schlapp, a U.S. News columnist, political consultant, and former aide to George W. Bush. Sharyl Attkisson, the former CBS News correspondent who now hosts the Sunday show Full Measure on Sinclair television stations. And Simon Rosenberg, president of the New Democratic Network. Okay, so Mercy, here is the Daily News that depicts Trump chopping off the head of the Statue of Liberty. Given this media onslaught and how brutal it's gotten, what do you make of the role of the mainstream media going after Donald Trump?
Well, it appears that the media has become almost part of the Democratic Party. They're like candidates running to a certain extent against Donald Trump. I think that it's become almost like an escalating war of emotions for the media, where they are just so upset at the mere fact that Donald Trump came up with this proposal of banning Muslims that they will do whatever they can. For example, in the case of BuzzFeed, where they said you can be politically unbiased, but here you go, you can call Trump a racist.
We'll talk more about that. But you say almost like the Democratic Party, much of the Republican Party establishment, from Dick Cheney to Paul Ryan, beating up on Trump is also.
Right, but they're not the media, right? So what's happening is that many in the mainstream media have become almost like the moral police. They're the ones that are deciding what agenda they're going to push through. And obviously they're not agreeing with Donald Trump on this issue, and they are making it loud and clear.
Sharyl Attkisson, have the mainstream media now morphed into Trump's all-out opposition?
I think, yes, this is part of the evolving nature of the so-called news media, where now they advocate, they press, they tell people what to think, how to feel, what not to think. And the reason they're so excited or anxious to do this about Trump, so it seems, is because they're getting no criticism from anybody they care about, because both Democrats and Republicans are giving them a pass and saying it's okay, so they've just gone hog wild.
That hurt when you said so-called news media. Simon Rosenberg on the opinion side, single day in the Washington Post op-ed page, Ruth Marcus says Trump crossed an uncrossable line of bigotry and xenophobia. Dana Milbank likened him to Mussolini. Kathleen Parker, who is on the right, most dangerous person to emerge on the U.S. political scene in decades. What's the impact of all this?
Well, I think the most fascinating part, just playing off what was said earlier, is that despite the condemnation, he's getting more airtime than he's ever gotten. I mean, all of these interviews you showed this morning virtually were all him. They weren't people talking about him. They were actually him engaging with the media. So he's probably had more news coverage and more opportunity to speak to the American people since his comment than at any other point in this entire election. So it's working for everybody, right? I mean, the media is getting to criticize him. He's getting the opportunity to rebut it. And frankly, I think he's doing, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, I think he's doing a pretty good job in handling the criticism and taking it like, a strong candidate at this point.
And it's interestingly enough, for that portion of the GOP voters, they're watching these interviews and they're saying, wait a second, am I going to support the Chris Cuomo going after Trump? Or wait a second, does Trump actually make sense? And why do they keep attacking our guy? And it really, I think, it makes it seem like almost the media is becoming a bit of the enemy for many in the GOP.
But many of your fellow Republicans think Trump's candidacy is a disaster. Most conservative pundits, many at Fox, think Trump's candidacy is a disaster. So it's not like, I mean, he's running for the Republican nomination. It's not like the usual left-right split.
But there are the conservatives as well. For example, Eric Erickson, a radio talk show, very popular conservative, he came out and said what Donald Trump, in condemning the, in banning the Muslims, basically said it was, quote unquote, a brilliant move. This is what Donald Trump does. It's the art of the deal. He throws out the big idea and then he negotiates it or takes it down a notch. So again, I think that you find those in the conservative talk radio in particular, there is a lot of support for Trump. And guess what? That's where the GOP voters, many of them, are getting their news.
Trump does tend to walk it back just a little bit, now emphasizing this would be temporary and making certain exceptions. But pick up on your point about the press not getting heat from the Democrats or the Republicans. So it's almost like the left and the right are uniting against Trump, and yet he's still way ahead in the polls.
So if there was any doubt about the disconnect that some people, when they watch the news, feel when they see the reality on the ground not portrayed really by anybody in the mainstream that they're watching, they know that they're getting, in some instances, what I call a false reality portrayed to them by agenda journalists who want you to think a certain way, and rather than reacting based on kind of facts and looking at what's going on, they react viscerally to statements they don't like or people they don't like, and they're surrounded by others of like mind who encourage them and urge them on. And then they're now in news organizations that encourage them to give opinions like they never did before. So this whole dynamic is changing. And a lot of people may like that who watch the news, but there is a large fraction of people who find that disgusting. And it kind of proves the points that they've thought or suspected for a long time.
Find disgusting that they believe that even so-called straight journalists and reporters are indulging in opinion and even commentary.
Forcing somebody's opinion down their throat rather than telling them the
But here's what the media are missing. So Wall Street Journal, NBC poll, there's been a lot of polls. 57% of Americans, or those surveyed overall, opposing Trump's plan on the temporary ban on Muslims. But among Republican voters, 38 yes, 39 no. Much more of an even split. So are the media, frankly, out of touch with those voters?
Well, possibly on this one. I mean, look, I think my take on this with Trump is that this was just not about bigotry or anything else. It was just stupid, right? This was a bad idea. I mean, more than half the Muslims in the world don't live in the Middle East, right? They live in places like England and France and Indonesia and India, and it was just, and I think so what we didn't get out of the media was taking him down on the merits of the argument, right? Which is where I think they really let us down, which is because there needed to be a discussion about the actual reality of where Muslims live and how many there are. We're not having that discussion
now.
And
how you would screen somebody. You're
right.
Not Muslim by a label. Why would a Muslim terrorist come in and say, I'm a Muslim if we were banning Muslims?
And you can lie, right? You can lie. There's a religious test on coming to the country. It was a bad idea, and we're not having that discussion.
I'm still asking the question because Trump keeps talking about his Muslim friends that agree with him. Yeah. I really want to meet these Muslim friends. I mean, Howie, you got to get them on the show, okay? We got to have these interviews.
Take a note of skepticism in your answer.
Well,
but look, let's talk about the pattern, because it seems like we rerun this every few weeks. Trump says something that many deem outrageous or offensive, and clearly, you know, there are a lot of people who have a deep, heartfelt objection to what they see as imposing a religious test by having even a temporary ban on people by religion. He calls into the shows, he defends himself, he mixes up the media, everyone's talking about Trump, all the campaign dialogue revolves around Trump. And then you look at the polls, and even though he's tight, either Cruz is leading or right. he's leading, or he's a couple points down in Iowa, it helps him.
Well, I think one of this past week when Frank Luntz did the focus groups with a lot of GOP voters, it was interesting because they really agreed with Trump, and it wasn't necessarily, they don't necessarily love exactly how he says things, right. but they like the idea of someone being tough and someone getting things done. This is what we keep running into, which is the fact that Trump's message is, although it can be bombastic and everyone's cringing going, I cannot believe he just said that, the fact that the GOP establishment, they don't agree with him. Yeah. For the GOP grassroots conservative voters, they're saying, wait a second, I don't care what the GOP establishment says. I don't care what the media says. Trump is right on this.
Let's take a quick look at how some of the other Republican candidates are showing their frustration.
And you all, quite frankly, should be ashamed of yourselves. All you do is ask about Donald Trump. I go every place I go. And then I have the press complain to me, why do you think Donald Trump's doing so well? Well, hell, man, if you're talking about him 24 hours a day, anybody can do well.
Oh, come on, Chris. You haven't given me or anyone else anywhere near the attention that Donald Trump receives. On your network, on every other network, he dominates the news coverage.
Unfair playing field by the media?
Well, but the media is giving him this playing field to try to disparage him and controversialize him. So they have their own goal, and it just isn't working out.
They also are interested in ratings in the case of television.
A point I think they've missed as a journalist in some cases is, I think part of the reason there is attraction to the things he has said is because they don't see the government as having a plan. They're afraid because the government they don't think is taking it seriously. So at least somebody is taking it seriously and has something that sounds like more of a strategy than they see from the government. And I think that's part of an issue that could be looked at.
And just briefly, Trump continues to go to these rallies, call the media scum. At one the other night, he went after NBC's Katie Tur by name, third-rate reporter, and that just fuels the narrative again.
Yeah, and look, but I do think that, and we've discussed this on the show before, Howard, is that part of it is that, what the goal of terrorism, right, is to scare people and to have, a single act of terror, make everybody really nervous and beyond the actual scope of the act itself. And so the media does have a role in this. I mean, the overreaction, right, to a terrorist act is part of the goal of the terrorists themselves. And so this debate about how we react to terrorism is, I think, fair game. And I think it's something you should continue to discuss on the show here.
Time to weigh in on Twitter. Send me a message at Howard Kurtz.